So just making sure that we do that work in advance. Structure preparation, sprinkler systems. So again, like Chief Watson said, turning on their own landscaping, their own sprinklers that they have. They might be on a well, so it might only go for a bit before it runs out and has to reload, but that's still going to bring up that RH for a little while in advance of that fire.
It's also a good thing to take into consideration when we're doing the structure defense planning. The part of the evaluation is the water distribution system to that community. And if the irrigation system is pulling from hydrants, we choose not to do that in a lot of cases, because the municipal structure protection systems that are coming to that event are going to want to rely on those hydrants. And if every home in that community is turned a sprinkler on in their yard, that pressure diminishes dramatically. So be mindful of that. It's better if it is on a well system. That way it just runs the well dry, and the relative humidity is escaped around that one property, but it doesn't affect the rest of the homeowners in their municipal water distribution system. So try not to turn on every property. If it's a well, that's a better system. And
Lou, wasn't that in 03 where like a lot of the sprinklers were turned on and it actually depleted that reservoir? So firefighting hydrant supply was at a minimum at one point, or zero? Yeah, it's way worse. Yeah, good point. So the ways we can protect the exterior structure, obviously with foams, gels. I don't see a lot of gels in BC. I haven't seen gels come out, so I think that's, yeah. And then structure wrap we've already discussed. So interior preparation, we want to close any windows and any non-flammable window coverings. So again, if we make entry into a structure, it might be on there, we want to make sure that A, we leave a note, but B, we write that down in our notebook so that it can go on our 214. Have the address, have what time, go in there, close the interior doors. So we're looking at compartmentalization inside a structure. Much like what we see today with the open builds, the open floor plans, is there's nothing stopping those fires once they start in one small room. But if you can, and you can compartmentalize that, you fill one window and it gets into a room, well, at least it's not going to, through the flow path, go through the entire structure, or hopefully it doesn't by the time we get to come back. Turn off fans or HVAC, turn off any LPG sources, turn the porch lights on, and that tells us that we have electricity, and it's something that you'll notice all of a sudden. You'll be driving up and down that road and you'll have electricity, then all of a sudden you won't. That's something to note in your head, and maybe if your strike team task force leader doesn't know that, something that you can communicate up to them. Close, don't lock the doors, and then leave a note for the homeowner. Not closing the doors, so when we return, we're able to go through and see if there's anything on the interior of that structure that may have ignited through those windows through radiant heat.
And also, just back to TRAs, you don't want to lock the doors in case you ever had to use that structure as a TRA.
Yeah, and a TRA can be on the lee side of the house. So as that fire front's coming in, you guys are on the back side of that structure, right? And if it gets too bad, you can move inside. Okay, so prep and defend. At this point, where we can defend is we're looking at something that has safety zones, right? That's the distinguishing piece between the ability to defend or the need to go. So it's used where there's adequate time to safely prepare the structure for defense prior to that impact, right? So we're being heavily supported with our fixed wing aircraft, which again is laying down a guard for us to either slow it down or redirect it away from us, which is great to see. You can use your rotary wings if you have access to them, where you have these spots that are out here that are a little bit longer than you can stretch your lines to, is you can bring a bucket ship in if they're available and help to knock those spots down around so they don't continue propagating past. So it is a bit of a combination. You're going to likely remain at that structure because we hope that the work that's being done here allows us to fight these spot fires around the structure and then bend this fire or slow this fire enough that we don't have to leave. If all of a sudden it gets angry and blows right through that, then this prep and defend might become a prep and go. So even though you have a prep and defend thought process and a tactic that you've been assigned, is you need to ensure that we keep these escape routes and safety zones open. We can't guarantee that that's going to hold and last. So personnel will likely remain at there. Again, foaming. The situational awareness must be maintained, and then your secondary plans in place in the event that it changes adversely. So it's really good that if you're having good communications with your boss and they tell you, hey, this is what I want you to go in and do, that's great, that's your primary plan. It'd be really good if you don't have it to say, hey, what if this fails? Then what am I doing? Right? So if they only give you a primary plan, it'd be great to get like another plan that says, hey, we're anticipating that this is going to be successful. In the event it's not, this prep and defend now goes to prep and go.
And in the task force strike team leader course that we teach, these are the same strategies and tactics that we teach those task force leaders. But we also teach them the primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency plan that you should be getting fed as an engine boss. And that becomes a strategy, but that's at a different course level. So these are the same tactics. The strategies come from the PACE acronym and the Draw D, which you'll get into the task force strike team leader course.
Okay, so prep and defend, it's defensible. So we know we have safety zones, right? So again, we're going to go through, evaluate this structure. We may have to refuel the pumps. We might have to turn them on. We might have to get a tender to fill it. Yeah. If it's a tender site and they ran it dry, we might have to, as part of our strike team or our task force, go back and fill all of the tenders. That might be our job to support this work that's already been done. Is this a video? Yeah. You added this one in, right? Yeah. Do you want to? Sure. So
this is a really good example from the Fire Department of Colorado Springs doing a prep and defend fire. You can see coming in. You can go ahead and play it. I can talk through it. There's a rank 1, 2 fire coming through this, obviously very well.
The Black Forest Fire is approaching this house that the strike team has been assigned to protect, and they are in position and ready to go to keep this house from catching on fire. You see that the fire is trying to creep up into the trees, but for the most part, this part of the fire was actually a creeping grass fire. Okay, the firefighter is now managing the fuels here by raking them up so they don't travel into the mulch area, and our crew is trying to do everything they can to manage the property here before the fire arrives. They want to make sure that if there's a gas grill out there, that gas bottle is not out. Here they saw some patio furniture out here, outdoor patio furniture, and so they're stacking it up here so it's not spread out all over the place and catches on fire. So they're stacking up in one area where they can protect that and make sure that the fire doesn't ignite that. And you see the fire starting to approach here. This is on the side of the house called the Delta sides. Firefighter is now standing, waiting for the fire to arrive to him. He's at the edge of the mulch, and where the grass meets the mulch, he's going to make sure that the fire doesn't travel past that line. And he's keeping his head on a swivel and watching for the fire in all directions. Now you see that firefighter at the back of the house here. He's on the what they call the Charlie side again, and he's waiting on the fire to arrive to him. Smoke is going to be produced in lots of copious amounts, and you'll see the fire starting to creep to him, roughly at about, looks like about 6 inches every second. The winds are starting to pick up now, and you can see a few embers blow across. They're cold embers, but nonetheless, visibility starts getting poor. What the video can't convey to you is that there's a lot of heat being blown in towards that firefighter. As the fire and the heat are coming to him, he has his personal protective equipment on. He also has a heat shield, face shield that is on his face to help filter out the smoke and the hot gases that are coming to him. He's saving all his resources here. What we're trying to do is allow the fire to burn out all the fuel around the house and let it blow right on by, and then we don't have to worry about that reigniting. So we're saving our water resources for when we really, really do need them. And we're just protecting the deck here and making sure that this fire doesn't get into the mulch. Now you see that the fire is trying to travel up the trees, but the homeowner did a good job of trimming those trees back up to about 10 feet so the branches don't catch on fire, the low-hanging branches. Managing the trees like this will keep the fire from spreading into the crown of the trees, which is very bad. And now the fire is starting to burn up to the mulch, and then lots of smoke starting to be produced. I'm taping this from behind the hot tub on the back of the deck, trying to keep myself from having to be subjected to too much heat, and mostly my camera. And the smoke comes, and it's pretty much a whiteout. Now this is looking on the other side of the hot tub. I decided to move out of the way here. The firefighter is now applying a small amount of water right where the fire has met up with the mulch. The fire has now passed through, and it's done exactly what we wanted it to do, and that is burn around the house and leave the house intact. I'm shooting now at an angle from where the fire did approach. So this is already burnt out area. So you can see how the wind is picked up. But this is how the fire traveled towards the house. I'm just trying to give you a perspective on how it did. And this, everything is nice and black here, and that's what we want. We don't want a bunch of unburned fuel here. And now the strike team is doing a little bit of mop-up action. Now we're using the water resources to make sure that the fire is dead out as it butts up against the mulch, because the mulch is very flammable, and that's not a good thing to have right next to your house, because the fire will wick right into the house and burn the house down. So guys are on the Bravo side now, and they are pulling up their hose, and then they're going to do a walk around here in just a minute, 360 degree. But in the meantime, they're going to make sure that everything is buttoned up to this mulch is dead out. And they will check that with the back of their hand. Make sure that it is cold and dead out. And that way we don't have to worry about this rekindling. They're loading up their hose and ready to move on to the next assignment, next house to save. You can see that sometimes almost total whiteout, where you couldn't see over the hood of the vehicle, and yet the fire is burning up against the road. But they're moving on to their next assignment and ready to protect more structures. In 5.5 minutes, you've just seen what it took approximately 2.5 hours to do, and that's structure protection at the Black Forest Fire.